the exit doors pop open and out walks Black Sabbath, the whole band, the big crosses, the whole deal. And we're sitting there taking a leak, and they walked right up to us, and Ozzy stood right next to us and took a leak.
Was he flirting with you?
Yeah, dude. Back then, there was no such thing as gay people back then. Sorry, no offense. You didn't talk about it back then. It was a back alley thing. But anyway, I'm a politician, and I think things through. And I relate everything to my personal life. About 10 years ago, I overnighted it to Trump and all his family. Nobody.
No. Healthcare.
No, I'm getting there.
I mean, Trump, regardless of whether people agree with Trump or not, Trump, I will always say he's a master of media manipulation.
Problem is, so we ended up kind of renting the boat to another fella who had a contact with Venezuela.
Oh, God.
So we took our ship into Venezuela to buy fuel, because Venezuela was communist. It was Chavez, right? And those guys, they just want money.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Only Lawsuits podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. I actually had to write down his intro beforehand. Kevin is a self-made entrepreneur. He's been in many industries, from owning an oil tanker in the Caribbean to being a politician. He currently owns a real estate company called HCB Real Estate, and he has a new book everywhere. It's available everywhere, called The Book of Me, The Life and Time of Kevin Hypes, the new Forrest Gump. Kevin, welcome.
The New York Forrest Gump.
The New York Forrest Gump. Kevin, man, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being on. So, Mike, get us started, man. What are we talking about, man? Because Kevin has hundreds of stories, and he's told us quite a few before we even started filming.
I think we start with a little bit about Kevin, man. Kevin, you've got a very diverse background. Talk to us about your book.
Sure.
What's it about? Tell us about yourself.
Well, I call myself the New York Forrest Gump. That's a little comical, but it is true. I am a New York guy. The whole you-all thing doesn't really work for me. And I've lived a very interesting life. I've done a lot of things, not all that I'm proud of, but I have done a lot growing up. I was a street kid from Queens, never went to college, worked in a factory. I was a hippie with hair down on my backside. I was in a rock band until I was almost 30. Went from there, became a Christian, changed my life entirely, but did even more interesting and funny things. Real estate developer, politician. I was an elected official in Sanford. I was a commissioner, and I ran for mayor in Oviedo. I've done many things, and I'll tell you why. It was really when I decided to change my life when I read the Bible. And I said to myself, people are afraid to do things in life. Many people, I've done millions of things, and that's an interesting way to go. But the reason why most people don't do things is that they have a fear. They're afraid to fail. And most people say, well, yeah, why? We know exactly why. People are afraid to fail because they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to be humiliated in front of their friends. But you see, that kind of an attitude stops you from advancing in life, stops you from being the best you can be. It's true. So I read a scripture in James chapter 4, verse 6 that said that God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. And I thought about that. And I said, you know what? If you're humble, you can't be humiliated. It's not possible. And I took that and I said, you know what? Whatever I'm afraid of, I'm going to keep doing it, do it first, and keep doing it until I conquer it. And from that point forward, I did everything I could think of that I might have a fear of. And it's been an amazing journey. And it's been a very interesting life. And I've failed most of the times.
You definitely mentioned a lot. And number one thing that stuck out to me that I don't know if you're aware, you probably aren't aware of, Josh especially, but so me and Josh are both, from New York as well. Josh, I was born in New York in the Bronx. Josh, where were you born?
Born and raised in Queens, Briarwood, Queens.
And you were Queens too, right?
Queens, yeah.
I obviously, when did you leave New York?
91, I moved to Florida.
How old were you when you moved?
I was 36, I think.
And Josh left when he was in middle school, around 12?
I left right after the 7th grade, and that's when I became friends with this gentleman. We've been friends for 23 years.
I left
24 years.
When I was maybe 2 or 3 years old, right? So I never really connected to New York. Josh had a little bit of connection to New York, and you were in there till your 30s. Where would you say I mean, at what point did you change your life? Was it when you were in New York? Did you find like God, or when you moved to Florida? Talk about that.
Yeah, I was a hippie, long hair. Went to all the rock
Did you go to
concerts.
Woodstock?
I missed Woodstock. I almost went, and of course, everything's a story with me. But I was in 8th grade when Woodstock happened. Of course, then Woodstock was just a concert. Nobody knew it was going to be Woodstock back then. I was in 8th grade. And a good friend of mine named Craig Caviar, and that's his name. He's
Wow, what a last
guy,
name.
Jewish guy. He must have been
Is
6.
caviar kosher?
Yeah, I guess.
Must be.
He was 6'2" in 8th grade, had an afro about a foot high, and had a full beard. The guy looked 35. And he says to me, Hypes, why don't we go to Woodstock? And I'm 14, 8th grade. And I said, I think I'll get in trouble if it's going to be a 3-day thing. I can't go. So I didn't go. That's unbelievable. Funny. I missed the best concert. Now, I did go to Watkins Glen, which was Summer Jam in 1973 up in Elmira, New York. And that's actually 600,000 people. That was a bigger concert, a way bigger concert than Woodstock. And one of the chapters in my book is about my trip up there. But I was a rock and roll guy. I was kind of a hippie guy. I went to the Fillmore East all the time to see bands. Matter of fact, I took a leak next to Ozzy Osbourne in an alley next to the Fillmore East. It's funny. It's a true story. Me and my friend, we took a subway into Manhattan. I was only about 15, maybe 16. And I tell my parents, I want to go to the city. They said, you're not allowed to go to the city. I said, well, I'm going to go see a Knicks game in Madison Square Garden. The Long Island Railroad goes into the bottom of the garden. Yeah. I said, so I'm not going to be in the city. I'll walk up the stairs and I'll just be in. I'll watch the Knicks. My dad said, okay, you can go. So, of course, me and my buddy took the train. Of course, we got out, went into the city, hopped on a subway, went down to the Fillmore East, stopped and bought all sorts of booze and cigars and all sorts of crazy things.
How old were you?
I was like 16.
What year? Like what?
70.
1970.
Isn't that? Is
How
that
was
when
New York in the 70s?
No, that's the 70s. Wasn't that when like Times Square was like full of like the adult stuff?
Yeah, that's what I was going to
I'm
ask.
sure it was. I don't know. I don't remember seeing that because we were just going for the Fillmore.
Well, I remember there was a point in time in New York's history where Times Square, there was a lot of like the adult. It was like an adult area.
There was some very bad areas at the time, but we were online waiting to get in. We can hear them inside doing a sound check, and I'm a guitar player, so I was like, holy cow, these guys are great. But after drinking like 6 beers, I was like, I got to take a leak. Where do you go? Well, there's an alley on the side, so we walked around the corner to the alley, and we're taking a leak against a brick wall. And the sound check was over, and you know how they got those side exit doors? Yeah. The exit doors pop open, and out walks Black Sabbath, the whole band, the big crosses, the whole deal. And we're sitting there taking a leak, and they walked right up to us, and Ozzy stood right next to us and took a leak.
Was he flirting with you?
Yeah, dude. Back then, there was no such thing as gay people back then. Sorry. No offense. You didn't talk about it back then. It was a back alley thing. But anyway.
What?
Come on.
Hey, you were in a back alley.
Well, I guess it was. But anyway, so I remember this very vividly. It's a chapter in the book, of course. I had a pack of Tijuana Smalls, those little skinny cigars with the plastic tip.
What are those, like fake Virginia Slims?
I don't know what they were, but I took it out and I pulled the cigars out of the box and threw them out and ripped the cigar box open and had the 4 guys. I got their autographs on the inside of the cigar box. Do you still have it? I can't find it.
Oh,
but it's true.
Man.
I used to have a book with all my, concert tickets and stuff. I can't find it, But anyway, that's just one story. It was a lot of fun. But back in the day, I was a hippie kind of guy and all of that. Cool. I was a factory worker, never went to college. I thought I knew it all. But it wasn't until, to answer your first question, I was in a rock band, an original band, but we also did a Beatlemania show. We traveled all over the Northeast. I was George, the quiet one. I couldn't do the English accent thing.
You quiet?
Well, on stage, I was pretty shy on stage. I was only like 25. I was the youngest guy in the band. And they always put me on the videos because I looked about 15 at 25. They want the young guy in the videos. But anyway, so my first marriage was blowing up my face, and I went to my brother. My older brother's a preacher. And I said, Mike, what do I do? My marriage is blowing up, and this isn't good. And he said, well, the first thing you got to do is get your act together with God. And I said, okay, well, my wife won't even visit you at your house, so that's out for now.
Yeah.
Maybe later. What's the second best thing? He said, get a real job. Get out of that rock band. And he was right. So he set me up with a guy in his church who was a commercial real estate developer, very wealthy guy. And even though I had no college or anything, the guy liked me. And something interesting about real estate, it's very simple. You don't need college for real estate. You're good with people, good with numbers. That's real estate. It's really that simple. People like doing business with people they like. And I've always been kind of a likable guy. He took me on. I was working with all these Harvard grads with their suits and ties. And here I am, this rock and roll guy who just cut his hair. I was very intimidated. These guys knew all about college football and golf. But you know what? After working with these guys for a couple of months, I realized, they're not any smarter than I am. College doesn't make you smart. But I was very intimidated at first. And then I realized that I had a knack for numbers and I was good with people. And I became pretty successful in real estate. But that's when I decided, it was when I found the scriptural perspective in life and I got my act together with God that I decided to change my life. And I even say this in the book. I say, so now you probably think this is the end of the book because now I'm a goody two-shoes and my life's boring. Oh, no. My life got a lot more interesting after I became a Christian because that's when I started doing the stuff that I was afraid of, and I kept doing it. So I eventually met my wife, my second wife. My first wife eventually divorced me, or I divorced her, actually, and I tried to reconcile with her. But she, I walked up with a Bible, and she was like, holy cow, what happened to you?
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting. It's interesting, right? Because, I was born in 88, and Josh, you were 88 too, right?
Yep.
So it's interesting though, I think it explains the times, right? Because New York, my parents grew up in New York in the 80s. And, I remember my dad telling me stories, and I'm sure Josh, same for you, of how, New York was in the 80s, it was really, that's when hip hop and all that stuff started really taking off. So it's interesting to see I think it's crazy to hear, I'm a New York guy. I listen to rock and roll because I automatically, with my youth, associate New York with hip hop. I'm a 70s
stuff, guy, right? So it's a whole different thing. It was all about, the 70s bands back in the day. But we decided to move to Florida because after I changed my life, I started working with my brother at his church, and I was in charge of the singles group and stuff. And then I met my wife.
That's awesome.
And we hit it off. God put us together, and she wanted to raise our kids down south because it was too expensive in New York, and she wanted to homeschool. Okay. So that's kind of why we came down to Florida.
And it's funny because through each decade, through each subsequent decade, it's always that New York is too expensive.
Listen, man, it's the truth. In New York.
Yeah. You would have both had to work.
Well, look, you're in real estate now, right?
Yeah.
And you have seen what's happened in Florida since COVID. Do you think Florida is too expensive to live per se now?
It is getting more expensive because everybody from New York is moving down here. Everybody from the Northeast, and these are people that are used to paying more for stuff. They sell their house up there now for $1 million, and when they bought it for $250,000, so now they can buy a huge house. They can afford to pay $500,000-$600,000 for a house and still have money in the bank.
Yeah,
and taxes are still low. My sister lives up in New York, and her taxes are $20,000 a year. My taxes down here are maybe $5,000, and that now when I first moved down here, taxes were $800. Well, so things have gotten up.
Well, that's a good conversation, right? Because so the next thing that I kind of wanted to roll into is Realtor. I saw some posts by different news places and Realtor.com. They posted some stuff that, and we've talked about this. The DeSantis is currently proposing the elimination of property tax bills, right, in Florida, because just like we started discussing, real estate is starting to get crazy and property taxes adjust according to the real estate values. Obviously, with real estate on the rise, it's really increasing property values to where people are paying, where they used to pay $800 a year for property for their property taxes, they're now spending $5,000 and $6,000. So, when you divide that $5,000 and $6,000 up over 12 months, that's an additional few $100, which kind of pushes the boundaries for some people given the circumstances. Naturally, people are making more money nowadays, so it's kind of adjusting to inflation in my opinion, but I personally am a proponent of trying to eliminate property taxes on homestead. I don't think we should get rid of property taxes on everything, because I think investors, people that are making money on their property should pay, right? How do you feel about the concept of elimination of property taxes in the real estate market in Florida. And, I really want, because Josh is going to be that third point where he's going to take what I say and what you say into consideration, because we're going to ask him how he feels, because he's going to be looking to buy a house soon. So,
Good point.
what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm a former elected official. So, and I was a commissioner in Sanford. This is about 20 years ago. And I also ran for mayor in Oviedo. So I'm very familiar with how cities operate and what their expenses are. And I can't say that I like the way they operate. I mean, there's always waste. The perspective of city people is different because they don't have this. It's not about profit and loss. It's just about having the money to do what they want. And in some cases, that makes the spending more than it should be in many cases. I can remember one time when I was a commissioner, we had the guy that was the head of the public works or something like that. And he had about $200,000 left in his budget, and the budgets roll over in October for the next year. And he started spending money like crazy. And I said, what are you doing? He's like, well, I got to spend it, because if I don't spend it at the end of this year, they're going to lower my budget. And I don't want that to happen. So they would spend money. So cities think about money as an obligation to spend their entire budget. Like they think that's their job.
So that's one of the most infuriating things for me.
It is,
right?
Yeah. But that's how they think. That's how they're taught to think. Is you get a budget and you spend it all. And if you don't spend it all, you're not working hard enough.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Rather than, I would have said, listen, if you reduce your budget by 10%, you save $200,000, you'll get a $10,000 bonus and your budget's going to be the same next year. That's common sense. That's what I would do, but they never do that because they don't deal in the real world. When I ran for mayor, I had some great policies. Now, I didn't get elected, and that's mainly because I ran against an incumbent, and I was the third guy in the race. And that's almost the...
We supported you, Kevin.
Yeah, well, wish you would have lived there then. You could have voted for me. But I had some great policies. I had this policy I called out of the mayor's pocket. Because, when you're a mayor in a small town, your salary is like $16,000. I mean, you don't run for mayor for the money, because you don't make much.
You run for the corruption. No, I'm just kidding.
That's what they thought, because I was the developer. So the assumption was that I was the bad guy, right? I tried to explain to these guys. I said, when I was in Sanford, they loved having a developer on the board. I said, why? Because they wanted to have somebody who understands how those guys make their money sitting on their side of the table, which is true.
So that's an interesting perspective, because I've critiqued, I don't know if you remember when I was talking about FWC, right?
Yes,
FWC, there's a whole big push with Florida Fish and Wildlife, where a lot of the people that are supposedly in FWC running it are developers and stuff. And a lot of people feel a certain way about that because, obviously, like our land in Florida is some of the most valuable land. When you see the true beauty of Florida, and I think Oviedo is a great example. Seminole County in Orange County or Central Florida is one of. I've lived in Orange County my whole life, moved over to Seminole and a few years ago, and now in Oviedo, I've seen the beautiful trails that run through, and I can't tell you as I've gotten older how much I value the nature in Florida, between the fishing, the hunting, the different things that I'm into. I felt a certain type of way when I hear a developer is on the board of, someone that's supposed to be guarding our resources, right? To the same extent, I do think it's important because you get someone that understands what land is, right? So as a developer, talk to me about, when you look at a piece of property, like for instance, when you analyze swampland, how do you see that as a developer?
Okay, so obviously you have to wear different hats here. As a developer, I want to develop, but you also don't want to hurt Florida. You want to do development the right way. So I'll give you a good example of that. First of all, when you're developing swamps or wetlands, you got to stay away from the high quality stuff. If wetlands move, there's a flow of water through a wetland.
And you also got to manage how many people develop in that area.
Right.
Because of water flow,
so
right?
You have to identify a piece of wetland that really doesn't need to be a wetland. If it's like a circular piece of wetland and it's not going anywhere, that you fill in. But if it's a flow, like a river under the land that's moving through, you don't mess with that.
Yeah.
Because that's a wetland. But for example, what I'm doing right now in Oviedo is a perfect example of what you're talking about. I'm taking the Oviedo Mall, which is a 1 million square foot retail center that failed. And so I got a sea of parking. So it's all paved over. I went to the city with a proposal to knock down a couple of department stores and bring in apartments. And first, I got a lot of pushback. The community did not want any more apartments in the city. But Oviedo's growing like crazy.
Yeah.
Instead, they built all these apartments in a place called On the Park, which is a nice place, but it's pretty close to the residential areas. So I had to explain to the council, what I'm doing is not developing, I'm repurposing. I'm taking an old mall with 2 dead department stores and a sea of parking. I'm not cutting down any trees. I'm going to put apartments there. The apartments are going to be on mall property, which is very close to 417, so no traffic goes into the communities. That's prime. And there's no way to get to the community from the mall. You got to go out on the major roads and go back in. So that creates zero traffic. And I'm turning it into what I'm calling a mixed-use development, eat, sleep, work, play. Because people are going to eventually live there and work there and eat there and entertain themselves there. It's all internal flow, no traffic on the roads. It makes perfect sense.
You're bringing New York to Oviedo.
Well, the thing is, though, these malls are where all the development already was because of the commercial areas. Keep it there. Don't knock down the trees 5 miles out near a sensitive area.
Yeah.
Redevelop the mall, which has 65 acres and more. Once I explained it to the community, they got it. But see, you had to explain it to them. See, now as a developer, if a developer came to me and I was sitting on the city board, I would get that right off the bat. And I would understand exactly how to allow the guy to do it. And whereas with typical city officials who are taught about city structure, they're not taught about profit and loss. They're not taught about creativity. So what happens is these guys, you show the city manager a pretty picture, and he usually approves the deal because he wants that in his community. But he doesn't think it through. So in our community, I had some very creative ideas as a mayor candidate. I had this one idea I called the Out of the Mayor's Pocket program. And they said, well, what's that? And like I said, you make $16,000. What are you going to do with that money? Well, I said, anybody in the city who comes up with a good idea that's going to save the city money is going to get a $1,000 bonus out of the mayor's pocket until the money's gone.
That's a great policy.
So now you got people who are doing the real work day to day, and it's a routine for them. Now you got them thinking, if we do it this way, we could probably save a little money and get it done a little faster.
I think that's a great idea for the Oviedo Mall, though, because one thing that I'll say is I used to hang out in the Oviedo Mall a lot.
Okay, so
as a teenager, and even though I just recently moved back to Orlando in early 2023, to see how much malls have died all across Central Florida has been pretty extraordinary. Yeah. Like Altamont still has some traffic, but Fashion Square is nearly dead. Oviedo, when I would come back, and even early in the year, it was cool to see some new shops in there. But the foot traffic in Oviedo is not nearly what it was as a teenager. So I think that that's a fantastic idea because you're creating you're creating a localized economy, where everybody who lives there in that apartment complex, they'll also traverse into the mall as well.
Right. And people, I went public on Facebook on this because people used to talk on Facebook all the time. And the malls, they ought to tear it down. It's got roof leaks. It's got this. It's got that. And the mall owner said to me, don't go on Facebook. You never please these people. Well, it bugged me. So I went on Facebook one morning and I rattled off my entire plan, 6 paragraphs off the top of my head. And then I went to the office, and the girl in the office goes, did you post something on Facebook? I said, yeah. This is before I really understood what Facebook was, social media. Jesus. I said, why? She goes, well, whatever you posted is going viral. So what does that mean? I got 1,100 thumbs up on the plan. The community didn't know what my plan was. They were never told because mall owners never talk to the community. They don't even let their mall managers talk. As a matter of fact, every single mall in this area won't even allow a news guy with a camera to come in the mall. They won't even allow them on the property. What? They call me, and I'm like, come on in. And I tell them the whole story. And by the time I'm done with them, they're a cheerleader for my mall because I know what I'm doing. And they usually walk in trying to come up with a story about roof leaks or vacant spaces. But by the time I'm done with them, they say, holy cow, this guy's got a plan. So the people in the community said, this guy's got a plan. That's the first time we heard about a plan. Within an hour, I got a phone call from 2 or 3 different TV stations. We want to interview you. I said, what for? Well, we saw your post. How'd you see it? Somebody sent it to me. So I'm doing TV interviews. I'm doing all sorts of stuff. But I had a plan because I've been doing this for 40 years. I know what I'm doing. And I fix broken assets for a living. That's what the majority of my business. I used to work for Kimco Realty, one of the biggest REITs in the world, real estate investment trusts. And Kimco had 85 shopping centers in Florida. I was in charge of 85 shopping centers to keep them fully leased. And things were changing. Like when a Kmart goes empty, what do? Well, I'd carve it up, put in Bed Bath, Michaels, and Ross. And put a new facade on it, increase the rents. I mean, to me, it was kind of common sense because I've been doing this for a long time. So malls is just the next level of that same problem. Department store sales dropped like a rock. Amazon came in and killed everybody. Then COVID hit. You're done. You can't have 1 million square feet of retail anymore.
Have you seen? Have you been to? Is it Deezerland? Where Bass Pro Shops is over on International Drive.
Yeah.
So I think
is that the guy with the cars?
Yeah. So when we were younger, when we were in high school, like that was a new development where they were starting to put in.
It
like
never made it that
John's.
Festival Center.
It never. Yeah, I think it was like some festival thing.
Yeah.
But I used to go there because I used to skateboard, and like they had a skate park. Van Skate Park was there, and all sorts of stuff. But it never really kicked off. And we actually, I go to Bass Pro to go get stuff every now and then. And I go to look at the fish tank. The fish tank's cool as shit. In
that
Bass
is
Pro.
cool.
That
Shout
is.
out to Bass Pro Shops. They should let me fish that fish tank. but the cool thing is, right, I went into that mall and I was like, I didn't know it's a private collection of automobiles. And it's the coolest shit ever.
It is.
But I'm like, what a cool way to repurpose this otherwise, now useless space. Because people, if you go to the outlets right down the road, people like that open vibe now, which is good. If I'm going out with my family, I want to be out. I'd love to just walk through an open air source, but then we live in Florida and you get a hurricane in 5 minutes. So it's like.
Well, each mall location is a different redevelopment. That's what's great about it. The good thing about malls is every single one of them was built at a great intersection. That's great real estate. But now what do you do with it? The Oviedo Mall, nobody knew what was back there. You couldn't tell who was in there.
We should start doing weddings at the Oviedo Mall.
We have a wedding venue there. We do. What's interesting about Oviedo Mall is most people think it's a horrible dead mall. And then I say, when was the last time you were here? 10 years ago.
Oviedo Mall's cool though. Like I liked how they had the little river through the food court.
Oviedo Mall was one of the first green malls ever built. It was built by Rouse Company 30 years ago, and it had vines growing up the sides and concrete floors, tubular construction, greenery and plants everywhere, and the stream going through. First green mall ever built. It's a beautiful mall. It's really more like a Google campus because it's got skylights. It's only one level. Doesn't have one of those. It doesn't have that big dungeon dark look that most malls have.
Yeah.
So when I saw it, I said, people, you got to knock it down. I'm like, you don't knock this down. This is a wonderful structure. This is beautiful. You don't need any capital improvements. It just needs to change people's minds.
That's really interesting that you say that, because I've been to the Google campus in New York and I never thought about it that way. You're right. Like the way that the space is airy in certain parts, it is pretty unique. One thing I'll say is I was in the Oviedo Mall maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And
we used to go to movies in the Oviedo Mall.
Yeah. Mike and I, we used to go see movies in the Oviedo Mall, but when I was walking around, one thing that I noticed over the years is that a lot of the shops have been kind of replaced by more of like experiences, right? So like I remember where there used to be maybe a mini department store. There's now a school for hair, like a Paul Mitchell. Yeah. I think that's what was there, like a Paul Mitchell.
And I can explain exactly why, because it's all part of that eat, sleep, work, play. You see, regional malls, you can't. We have 1 million square feet of retail in that mall. We used to anyway. That's what it had. It takes 250,000 people in a 5-mile radius to drive enough foot traffic into a 1 million square foot mall for it to be successful. Oviedo Mall should have been built. There's only 160,000 people in 5 miles. So no matter what you got in that mall, it's a tweener. You've got Waterford Lakes to the south, only 15 minutes away, and you got Sanford to the north, 20 minutes away. We're a tweener. National chains are not going to put a store in all three. They go to Waterford, they go to Sanford, and they won't go in the middle. But they closed all their national. We got some. There are some chains that can do that, but most chains won't. I had people tell me all the time, why can't we get a Dick's Sporting Goods here? Oviedo's one of the best sports cities in Florida. They're successful at everything sports. And they're like, why won't Dick's come here? And I said, they don't have to. He said, what do you mean? I said, Where are you buying your sporting goods now? Well, I got to go to Waterford. They got your zip code. They're already getting you. So why would they open a store in the middle, hurt the sales of both their other stores just for your convenience? It's not good. It doesn't work that way.
They should put a Bass Pro Shops that I can fish the fish tank.
A lot of people said they want a Bass Pro.
Well, now that you're there, you'll be frequenting them quite often.
And I tried to get them. I tried to get them.
You run on that alone, bro. I'll donate every single dollar I can, bro.
I tried to get them. They wouldn't go.
Bass
There's
Pro
many
Shops,
reasons why.
but you got the condition is the only way I'm supporting it is if I can fish the fish tank.
Oh, listen, I got a nice big fish tank in my house. We'll fish there. So, but at the end of the day, it's not about what people want. It's about what works. It has to be a win-win. So many people call me, we want an Apple store. We want this. We want that. I'm like, you're not getting it. Well, what do you mean? So the retail will come back. And this is the way I tell people. I said, first, I got to get the foot traffic back in. Retailers won't go to a mall without foot traffic. You got to have it. That's the last piece of the puzzle. I will get retail to go back there again. I'll get good retail, but it'll be less retail, not 1 million square feet of retail, maybe 80,000 square feet. And you know what I'm going to put there? I'm going to put in good, solid, regional, unique Winter Park type tennis because the median income in Oviedo is just about as high as Winter Park.
Well, you know what's interesting? So like when you talk about real estate, right? Cause look, I mean, I'm partially to blame. My type of lifestyle, I'm partially to blame. But a lot of professionals and busy young people like me, Josh, I don't want to waste time going to a store. So I'll just hop on Amazon. Yeah. And sometimes
we all do that.
That's the problem, right? So it's like, the only thing that I will leave my house for because is when food. So it's like when I think about it, like Oviedo in the Park, when you talk about Oviedo in the Park, their food selection there sucks, in my opinion.
Well, I can tell you exactly why. Because the city of Oviedo should have asked me how to develop that thing. I know that sounds a little arrogant, but I talk to the city manager about it all the time. I said, Brian, all that retail in the back, it's going out of business. He's like, how dare you? I said, Brian,
it is.
I said, they can't be seen from the road. That's what happened to the mall. I said, what do you got back? What's your drawback there? You got a mud hole and an amphitheater. That's
they have this little section of food court. And the restaurants, I'm not saying they're bad restaurants.
People are supporting it. They're trying their best to support it. But if you can't be seen from the road, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
So it's all going to become destination.
But that's the thing. That's the thing. Like the selection isn't as diverse as it needs to be. Because sometimes like me and my wife will take the baby. We went over there and we went to go just kind of hang out. And I just looked at the food selection. I wasn't feeling it.
Well, they can't get national chains, just like I can't get national chains because inside the mall. So that's why it needs to be eat, sleep, work, play. So now I'm bringing in some very high-end restaurants now, but it took me a long time to get there. But most of these places, if you don't have a critical mass, that's the key in retail. The only way retail works that can't be seen from the road is if you have a critical mass of retail.
Have you seen the H Mart that launched here in Orlando?
I recently went. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah,
H Mart opened and it's I didn't know what H Mart is, but I got to give it to them. Their like marketing behind that thing is it's just like Buc-ee's, right?
Yeah.
Like you put Buc-ee, like the one thing I'll notice is certain companies do such a great job at marketing. It goes to show why marketing's so important, right? That's why me and Josh started the marketing companies because we really like understand how important marketing is for business. But the one thing I'll say is H Mart. I went to H Mart and frankly, number one, I didn't know anything in the place because I can't read any of it. So I went in there, walked around. I still spent money on stuff I did not know how to read. but the hype they built around it, it drew lines of people. I haven't seen lines out of a store since like Black Friday in the late 2000s or early 2000s when I was in high school, or the game releases. Me and Josh, I remember we used to wait outside of like Target and all these places
for Grand Theft Auto.
For Grand Theft Auto.
I just did that last Friday. I opened a tenant in a vacant Sears at Oviedo Mall.
Oh yeah,
it's called Crazy Hot Buys. It's a bins store.
I saw you post about it.
Oh, it feels hilarious.
What are those bin stores?
Well, this guy's a very smart guy. He's got direct contacts with Amazon and Home Depot. And
my girlfriend loves bin
stuff.
stores.
And what they do is They buy all the leftovers, I guess, but they're brand new stuff. Not all of it's brand new, but most of it and a lot of it is, and they get it at a super discount. They'll get like big screen TVs for like 80% off because they're overstocked.
We need
to
to talk to that guy. We need to do some marketing. For him.
They'll literally get, to drive Kevin's point home, like they'll literally get like AirPods for pennies on the dollar, and then you can go into the bin store and there's only a few available.
That's the key.
But you can get the AirPods for like $10.
So it's like Black Friday every day.
Yeah,
it is. So this guy came in. He told me how he does it. It's very methodical and it makes perfect sense. The first day it's $17. Everything's $17. If he sells a 65-inch screen TV, which he has done
for $17,
but everything else that he sells, he gets for $5 and he sells it for $17. So he throws out the lost leader to get you in the store, and he puts about 10 big screen TVs amongst 30 or 40 bins, and people go running in trying to find them. But while they're there, they see other stuff that they want, and he gets the cheaper stuff at a better deal. So he ends up making out very well. Then the next day, the price drops to like $12. The next day, it drops to $9. The next day, $6. The next day, $3.99.
I didn't know about those bin stores until recently. But I walked in and I was like, what is this? Because you just see a bunch of people. So I guess, have you ever heard of the flea markets?
Well, there are flea markets. That's a whole different animal.
Well, so that's what I thought it was. So now my understanding
flea markets
a little
don't
bit
necessarily sell stuff real cheap. I mean, they sell it cheaper. But this guy, it's a great deal, but you got to get in there first. He opened at 5 a.m. on Friday morning, and I made the deal with him, and I said, I'm showing up because I want to take pictures of this. He said, Kevin, there's going to be thousands of people waiting to get in. I said, I don't believe it. I was there at 4:30, and it was cold out. There was a line around the block. The parking lot was packed. So and I walked up to the first lady, and I said, are you number one? She says, yeah, I'm number one. I said, how long you been here? She goes, I was here Thanksgiving at 4 p.m.
Wow.
She was there for 12 hours waiting to get in. It was amazing. It was amazing. So
I mean, that's pretty incredible, though, because I have fond memories back in the day of doing Black Friday shopping and being a part of the experience. But, one one thing that I want to sort
fighting.
Fighting other people for the deals. It was a lot of fun.
Give me that soundbar.
Yeah.
This is before consumerism really took over, with Amazon. But one thing that I wanted to circle back around to, because I feel like it's really important, is you have a very unique perspective. Not only as somebody in real estate, but somebody like as an entrepreneur, seeing like the increase in cost across all of Central Florida. I currently live in Apopka, and the three areas that I'll pinpoint right now are Apopka, Sanford, and Oviedo. Three areas that have really, really exploded developmentally in the last 5 years. I mean, I could say the last decade, but it's really like the last 5 years where it's really exploded. What can you say to not only like the increase in cost, but what local politicians can do? Because I know we touched upon the taxes, right? What can local politicians do to keep the costs lower? Because with all of these new developments, because I want to also preface it with this, you get pushback from the community. Like currently in Apopka, they're putting up new apartment complexes, and there are a lot of people in Apopka right now that are giving a huge pushback to these new developments that are taking place. So how do we keep the costs lower for Floridians even as more people are coming in?
That's a great question, and it's not an easy question to answer because there's really no absolute quick way to lower overhead. And local politicians can only do so much. Like, for example, the biggest cost probably right now is interest rates. Now you buy a house now and you're paying 6.5%. 3 years ago, you could get a deal at 2.5%, 3%. Well, that's a whole different. Now your mortgage is down by $1,000 a month. $1,000 a month is a lot of money. Most of the adjustments that local politicians can make are not going to add up to that much money, but there are ways to do it. For example, when you have your plan for the city, very often cities will approve apartments and things like that because they pay some pretty big fees. They pay the impact fees, and that's how the city gets their money to absorb it. An impact fee is a one-time fee. If they work on bringing in businesses and help the businesses open and provide jobs, now they're getting steady income on taxes on the business because businesses pay taxes every month.
Yeah.
Whereas apartments, you get a big hit when they build it, and then all it does is put pressure on the city, because now you got another 5,000 people who need fire service, police service, and all sorts of, and all of those things put pressure on a local government to hire more people and get it done. And then you got road costs. The more you residential you bring into a community, the more you got to widen the roads, and you got to maintain those roads. And these things infrastructure is incredibly expensive. So it's very difficult for a city to keep costs down. There's always ways to do it. Like I said, I have creative ideas. I had all sorts of, like I said, out of the mayor's pocket, there's efficiencies. You can cut budgets, but it's not easy.
That's the problem, though. We need to get away from that problem, that to make it more affordable in these developing cities, like Kevin identified earlier, we need to get away from all government officials, local, state, and even federal, their concept of we need to blow through our budget. There should be a benefit given to the people of the city, that if they don't use the budget, the people of the city should be able to be like, all right, that's why we're keeping you in office.
I actually didn't even know that.
I told you what I would do. You come in below your budget, 10% of that savings goes in your pocket.
You blow your budget, you're out.
I don't know why they don't do stuff like that.
But I didn't even know that if you didn't go through your entire budget, they decrease your budget the next year. That's bullshit.
It's
Well, it's because it makes sense, right? Because the state governments and the bigger, the parent government or situation, they look at it and they're like, okay, well, you didn't need this much money to operate, so therefore we're not going to give you this much.
Oh yeah,
money.
Everybody wants a bigger budget.
But if you have
more important,
here's the thing. Like I think that's the problem, is you're incentivizing government waste, right? And you need to incentivize efficiency.
Okay, so now you're getting into the political realm here, and I could talk forever on that. I have political policies that nobody's ever heard of that are all amazing ideas and that are all original thinking.
Yeah,
So I have a healthcare policy.
Talk about your healthcare policy.
Yeah.
Oh, it's an amazing policy.
I don't necessarily agree with all that.
I have a lot of policies. They just come to me. Don't ask me why. I'm a politician, and I think things through, and I relate everything to my personal life. It gives me ideas on stuff. So I wrote a Russia policy about 10 years ago. I overnighted it to Trump and all his family. Nobody ever
No.
called me.
Healthcare. We don't
I'm
wanna
getting there. So I was doing an interview on my Russia policy, and the woman thought it was a great policy. And then she goes, well, what would you do about domestic stuff? You're so good at foreign policy. I said, I could solve that too. She goes, well, then what would you do about healthcare? And I said, that's a pretty complicated problem, probably the most complicated problem. And she goes, oh, so you don't have a policy? I said, I didn't say that. I said, the way it works is I have to sleep on it. And at 4 a.m. in the morning, the policy will come to me. And I was half joking, but it happens. So I went home that night. I went to sleep. 4 a.m. in the morning, I got the policy. It hit me. I couldn't believe it. So I called her back. I said, I'll tell you the policy. So I'll tell you the policy. The first thing I know is that the more complicated the policy, the simpler the solution. That's really the way it works. So here's my policy with healthcare. I owned a hamburger franchise called Muya Burgers, Fries, and Shakes. And what's interesting about a franchise is the franchisor, which is the corporate entity, they charge you a franchise fee to buy their franchise. And for that fee, they show you how to make their hamburgers the right way, the way they do it. So it's kind of a secret formula thing, and it's an operations thing. So you are getting some value there. So you pay $50,000 and you get the franchise. Well, then you got to pay a royalty, 7%. So everything that you sell, they get the first 7%. And then when I say the first 7%, they take it directly out of your account. When you sell a hamburger, 7% of that sale immediately goes to the corporate office. Here's the interesting part, though. They get their 7% whether you make a profit or not. They get their 7%. You could be making no money. They're still getting their 7%. And I said to myself, boy, that's a pretty good racket. And then I said, wait a minute. Healthcare. Here's what I would do if I was president. And I should be president, because I have a lot of good policies. I would start a healthcare
This is
franchise.
Kevin announcing for...
This is it, yeah.
He's announcing.
I would start a healthcare franchise, and I would make everybody who has anything to do with healthcare, and I mean everybody, right down to the ambulance chasing lawyers. When John Morgan sues somebody for $1 million and he gets the $1 million, he's going to have to pay a franchise fee, a royalty.
Well,
Oh, wow.
See, that's where I don't agree.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me. No, you're just going to charge more.
We're
That's
here blood sucking the
Sorry.
people, and we're chasing ambulances so we can
I
make
guess I
money.
should cut that out. You can cut that out. But listen to the policy. It really makes a lot of sense. So hospitals, you got to buy a franchise. Each hospital's going to pay a couple of $1 million for their franchise. Then 10% of all the money they take in is going to go to the government. It's going to go to me because I'm the franchisor. The government is the franchisor. So a hospital bed, $200 a day, I get $20. Anything that they pay for wheelchairs, you're building them for $100, I get 10% of that if you sell it. Pharmaceuticals, I get 10%. Anything that has anything to do with health care, insurance, everything.
Yeah, all the
You got to buy a franchise.
So we're including all of the from the top to the bottom. If you're
everything.
touching the industry
If
at all,
healthcare, everything, insurance, all of it. So I would sell franchises to every person that wants to operate and make money in the healthcare industry, and they're all going to pay me. A law firm might pay $1 million, a hospital might pay $10
kind of
million.
like the mafia.
But it is, but it's the government mafia. But my franchise fee is 10%. That's what I want.
That's too high.
Now listen, at the end of the day, here's what's happening though. You know what we spend a year on healthcare in this country?
No idea.
$10 trillion
I'm
a
part
year.
of that problem.
Well, what's 10% of that? $1 trillion. You know how much it would cost to give free healthcare to everybody in the U.S.? $1 trillion. I just solved your healthcare problem right there. And the money's not coming out of the taxpayer's pocket, and it's not coming out of the government's pocket. It's being paid by the people that are making the millions on healthcare. That's my policy.
Well, you know what I'll say is that I think even listening to that, it's a pragmatic solution, to a broader problem within like the healthcare ecosphere. I think many people's immediate fear would be the distrust in government, right? Because
I agree. That's why they got to elect me.
yeah, because that's really what it comes down to. It's that like
But here's the bottom line. I came up with this based on my real life experience. I owned a hamburger franchise, and I saw that the franchisors got the better side of the deal because he gets his 7% off the top, whether I make a profit or not. And that struck me. So it's my real life experiences that I form my policies with. And the second thing is, have you ever heard anybody say what I just said about solving the healthcare problem? Of course not. Nobody has. All these talking heads on TV, all these super college educated think tank chuckleheads that are on the TV getting paid for 30 seconds of speech, they say nothing new. They say the same thing over and over. Me, I'm an original thinker. Everything I say is original. And I'm not even college educated, for crying out loud. So vote me in as the president. When I ran for mayor, and this is true, my campaign manager says to me, "Why are you running for mayor, Kevin? You're like the busiest guy on the planet." I said, "Well, I'm a former politician and I have a lot of good ideas. I think I'd be a good mayor." And he goes, "Is that the reason why you're running?" I said, "You really want to know the real reason?" "That's not why." He said, "Really? Why?" I said, "Listen, folks in Oviedo, they're wonderful people. They don't need me as their mayor. They have no problems here. A little bit of traffic, that's about it. They need me as their president." And he goes, "What does that mean?" I said, "Very simple. I get elected mayor. This is true." I said, "I'm going to resign the next day and I'm going to run for president as the Republican Pete Buttigieg, local mayor, runs for president." I said, "Because all I need is an angle for the media to get behind me and hear the things that I say." I said, "You put me on a stage with any and everybody in politics up there in a debate, I'd crush them all off the top of my head with no notes." Now, I know that sounds arrogant. It just happens to be true.
I mean,
But it's good media. I mean, Trump, regardless of whether people agree with Trump or not, Trump, I will always say he's a master of media manipulation.
Problem is, I ain't got time to go up the ladder. I'm almost 71 years old. I got to go right to the top.
Yeah.
So if I would have won, I would have resigned. The media would have said, "What are you doing?" "I'm resigning." The next day, "What happened, Kevin?" "I'm running for president." The media picked that up, and then they just got to listen to what I say.
Yeah.
But listen, Pete Buttigieg ran as a Democratic mayor for president, and because he was well-spoken and had decent ideas, he almost went to the top. The guy ended up as the transportation secretary.
wasn't he was Pete Buttigieg was the
He was a mayor of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
He was just a regular mayor, but he was capable of speaking well. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
he
moved
was.
him up.
Yeah, he was. Like,
But he was. So that's what I was gonna say. He was gay, wasn't he?
he
is
was.
gay.
And
He is
so,
gay.
so that's what I think.
He struggled
but see,
to
that's
break
the
through the
problem.
mainstream
Yeah.
because
Because of
of
his-
Actually, he
yeah.
got
Targeting
where he
sexuality.
got. Him being gay had nothing to do with where he got.
Well, no, I'm saying
he
that
earned where he
kind of
got.
held him back.
Yeah.
I feel
I
like
don't
because
think so.
because here's the
Yeah.
thing: certain people
Yeah.
look.
Listen,
Like
there
we're
are people
open
that won't
to
vote
it,
for him. I get it.
but there's people that wouldn't vote for
True.
him because of that.
Yeah.
Which that that's going to that as people get more open minded
Right.
to the concept. Like there's nothing wrong with it.
There's
Nothing wrong with that at all. The
And-
thing is, though, he was
But people
well
still
spoken.
put that stupid negative
Right.
connotation to it.
Well,
you know?
they do, but with him, he came across very level-headed, and he had very
Yeah.
decent ideas, and he was very well spoken.
Yeah.
So if he could go from a local mayor to the president, imagine me with all the great ideas I have, because I think out of the box. And I mean, I'm a problem solver. Just
Dude,
by,
then
by
you can
nature.
write another book. It could be the Oviedo Donald Trump. You go from like owning
it would just be named this: the Republican Buttigieg.
Well, but
but
last
then
thing,
people might think you're gay.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with it, but I'm just saying. It's just listen. As soon as you said Buttigieg, I was like, wait a minute, that guy was
Well,
gay.
but that was my angle because that's what he did, and he went far. And I said, but the thing is, no one's listening to what I'm saying on the national stage.
Yeah.
I tried to get a bunch of these reporters because a lot of these guys read my policies. I get a guy in Channel 6, Eric Von Aken, good friend of mine. I said, here's my Russia policy. Tell me what you think. He called me up and he says, you should be like up in D.C. handling foreign policy. I said, I know I should, but nobody knows who I am. I said, do an article on me. And he's like, nah, I can't do that, man.
well, one thing, because I want to transition into this because we could talk about politics all day. So the last thing, politically, I want your opinion on because we're talking about someone who's talking about politicians who are great with the media. And one person that recently got elected in New York, we're all New Yorkers here, is Zoran Mamdani, right?
Right.
So what's your opinion on Mamdani?
Well, I don't know him personally. So, you can only go by what they say. And they say he's kind of a socialist and maybe a communist. And I think Trump took the right approach. Listen to the guy, meet with him face to face and find out what he wants to do. And if what he wants to do is good for the people, and then you go with it and you help him out. Do the best you can. It's all about serving the public. Now, we all know that socialism and communism doesn't work. Over years, it's never worked. So you don't say, let's go down that road, but you do say, tell me your ideas. When somebody talks to me, it doesn't matter if I'm a Christian, it doesn't matter if I'm gay, it doesn't matter if I'm anything. Kevin, what's your ideas on solving this problem? Listen to that. And if you think my idea is a good idea, then do it. It's really that simple.
A conversation can produce multiple topics, right?
Right.
Look at how many things we've covered today, right?
Yeah.
Some are good, some are bad, some are dumb because I intend.
And we haven't even gotten to the oil tanker story yet.
Which is something that I want to hear about.
So there's some. We'll talk about oil in a minute. We'll talk about oil in a minute. But look, as long as you're willing to have a conversation, right, you're gonna get points of view, and those points of view you can extract tidbits of things from people.
It's
right?
even better than that. Listen, Trump is his own worst enemy sometimes. I mean, listen, I'm a New York guy, so I get Trump. I remember in 1986, we had an ice skating rink in Central Park that was busted down for like 6 years and empty. It was a disaster. It was Mayor Koch. And Trump opened his mouth in 86 and he said, you know what, I can fix that thing in 6 months. And Koch said, you know what, go ahead and give it a shot because he thought it was impossible. Trump took it over, fixed it in 6 months at probably half the price that the budget was for. That's what I said.
You know what?
A business guy in politics is what's needed. That's when I saw it. But the thing is, because he's a business guy, he doesn't have the tactfulness.
You know what?
of a politician.
You know what to fix that ice rink sooner?
Me.
Ambulance chasing lawyers suing the shit out of the city, baby.
But the truth is, Trump is a genius businessman, but I've read a lot of books about leadership. He's not really a great leader. Know why? Because leaders have to be unifiers. Leaders have to speak passionately.
Yeah.
Leaders have to know how to connect with people and listen to people. Now, Trump is an amazing business guy, and on a one-on-one conversation, he's amazing. Everybody who's met with him one-on-one says, he's a pretty nice guy, and he listens, and on Danny, whatever his name is, he said that. So did Bill Maher, and all these guys that met with him one-on-one. He's a very charming, straightforward, honest guy. The thing is that people don't realize is that all the stuff that Trump says publicly over a microphone, all the rest of these politicians are saying behind everybody's back. And that's just the way it is. People are people. They're all the same. The politicians are slick enough to not say it publicly. Trump just says it.
Well, listen, he's a New York guy. And I want to talk about another New York guy now.
Something to do with oil?
Yeah, and he also...
Is that me?
No, I don't think you want to be this guy.
Okay.
This guy, he's a New York guy. Let's play Who's This Guy? So
put him up on screen.
Yeah.
There's a lot of New York guys.
New York guy involved with oil, currently arrested.
Currently serving
and 50 Cent just released his documentary that I watched. It's P. Diddy. You don't want to be that guy.
No, listen.
So look, the reason why I want to bring up P. Diddy is because I just watched 50 Cent, which you're probably too old to even know about.
That's true. I'm a 70s guy.
But we're not talking about the Beatles, and we're not talking about gas prices in the 70s.
That hip-hop stuff never made any sense to me. It never made any sense to me, but that's okay.
So 50 Cent released a Netflix documentary. You know about Netflix. You're not right?
My movie's going to be on Netflix when I'm finished with it. That's another story.
So there's a documentary that got released it's called P. Diddy, The Reckoning, right? And it's real interesting. The beginning of the documentary is hilarious because I don't know why Diddy thought it was a great idea for him to pay someone days before or while he knows an FBI investigation is going on and they just raided his house. He paid someone to follow him with a video camera. And this the dumbass camera person recorded
everything.
This is the one thing I'll say as a lawyer right here. Do not ever have someone record you for a documentary or anything while you're on the phone with your lawyer on speakerphone.
Oh.
Yeah.
The documentary opens with him talking about to his lawyer on the speakerphone, and he's literally like complaining, like, you guys are screwing me over. Like, the narrative they're pushing is wrong. Like, because I'm sure you're aware, he got charged with RICO for his record label being a criminal organization. I mean, there was allegations of sex trafficking, prostitution. There was allegations of him assisting with killing Notorious B.I.G., Tupac, all sorts of stuff, right? Very, very crazy stuff. The documentary is actually, I was kind of disappointed because I was hoping that it would be a little bit more petty, like it would just get a little bit more, to me, it was a very good documentary. When I heard 50 Cent was doing it, I thought he would take some real low blows because he has a vendetta against Diddy per se because of something involving his former baby mom or whatever.
Right,
so Diddy was obviously a very bad person with all the stuff he brought forth, right? And that's one thing, being that you probably a little bit about it. The thing that documentary really showcased is Sean Combs grew up in New York, and his purportedly his father was a drug dealer. Kind of bringing to point some of the things I talked about. New York in the 80s, 90s were known for drug dealing. He was not a real thug. He grew up with money supposedly. But he was raised in this environment where he was exposed to these crazy things.
No morals. I mean,
no morals, right?
There was a whole different set of rules for folks that were, raised in that way. Not that they're bad people, but when you don't live by godly rules, in my opinion, that might sound strict to some people, but that gives you a much more correct way of living.
One of the craziest things that I talked about, and I don't know if you were around, if you were in New York, is there was an incident, and this kind of ties. This is one thing that I really found interesting in the thing. He didn't really get fame until there was a basketball game. I think it was in Harlem. I'm not sure where it was, but he was like the vice president of Uptown Records or something like that, or whatever record label he was working with. It was the most the new record label that was real prominent with in the hip hop industry. And Heavy D was part of it, all these people. So he was part of that. He was like 18 years old, young kid. He hosted a hip hop game with Heavy D. And there was, I guess, a thing in New York where the crowd would bum rush the doors when it sold out. So they were in like a high school gymnasium, could only fit maybe a few hundred people, if that. Needless to say, sold out, crowd bum rushed, and a bunch of people died. And he actually, that's how they said that he ended up becoming famous, because he was all over the news because lawyers started getting involved, suing for stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of pushed him to fame. And that's when he started like taking off and doing his thing. And it's like, I saw that, and it's a great documentary. If you want to, kind of just experience like the craziness of this guy's life, it really showcased like how he didn't do drugs. He didn't do alcohol when he was a young kid, but as he got older and that fame hit him,
sure,
it's like the fame, the money, got him to be arrogant.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, and it took away his morality.
Money's dangerous. Too much money's dangerous.
Yeah.
You want enough to live on, take care of your family. Anything more than that, it gets you in trouble. I have a couple of theories in life, and these are my Christian theories. It's very simple. Like, why did God create grass? It grows, you got to cut it. It grows, you got to cut it. It makes no sense. Yes, it does. God invented grass to keep men busy. As long as you got to mow your lawn, it keeps you out of trouble. Idle hands. So when you make enough money to hire a kid to mow your lawn, be careful.
But then you got
comical, but it's half true.
So that makes me think about this. Why did God create baby oil? To keep P. Diddy busy.
Okay.
Well, you know what? Segueing, because we could talk about Diddy all day, but segueing from the baby oil to the oil tanker.
Oh, here we go.
Right? So tell us a little bit about this story, about you having this oil tanker in the Caribbean.
Okay. Well, I'm an entrepreneur. And what that really means is that I'm a risk taker, a big risk taker. I shouldn't be, but I am. It's kind of the way I'm built. I'm not irresponsible per se, because the plan has to make sense, but I'm a risk taker. So I had a buddy of mine who came to me, a fellow broker, and he said, I got this plan. I said, what's the plan? He says, we're going to buy an oil tanker in the Caribbean. I said, you're kidding. Well, what are we going to do? He goes, well, he happened to know a ship's captain, a guy that was raised in Honduras, who was a ship's captain. And the guy knew about a fish packing plant on one of the islands off of Honduras. And this fish packing plant had fish boats that went out every day and picked up, lobsters and crabs and stuff. And they packed them and they shipped them to Miami. The problem is, because they're on an island, they couldn't get fuel for their boats very easily because it had to be boated out there. And he was getting his fuel, diesel fuel, shipped by small boats, maybe 20, 30 gallons at a clip.
Wow.
But he needed more fuel than that. So my guy did some research and found that if we bought an oil tanker and we flagged it in Trinidad, and Trinidad has the biggest oil tanker oil refinery in the whole Caribbean, that back then, this was back 20 years ago, if you flagged your ship in Trinidad, you were able to buy diesel fuel at half price.
Wow.
Because you were doing local commerce. If you hired Trinidadian guys on your ship, in their minds, then you deserve to get the fuel at half price so that you could deliver stuff around the Caribbean at a discount. So he goes, so what we're going to do is buy an oil tanker, and we're going to flag it in Trinidad, and we're going to buy the fuel for $1.50 a gallon. We're going to sell it to this guy on the island for $3 a gallon. So I said, okay, how big a tanker? He goes, well, we're looking at one right now down in Mobile. 300,000 gallon tanker.
Wow.
340 feet long, 85, 90 feet wide. It's old, but we're going to fix it up and we're going to use it, really. So that means we're going to have 300,000 gallons. So if we buy it at $1.50 and we sell it for $3, we're going to make $450,000 for every trip we go to the island. And the island wants at least one, maybe two trips a month to fuel their boats. So we're going to make between $450,000 and $900,000 profit a month. Well, what do you say to that?
Oh yeah.
And I'm
I'd
like,
put it in a
is that
heartbeat.
possible? And he's like, I can't seem to kick a hole in this thing. I've been looking at it. I mean, bottom line is we buy the tanker. We own the asset, the main asset. So you're not wasting the money. So I said, I'm in. So I put a lot of money in. We had about 10 of us that put together. We had to raise about $1.5 million. We bought the oil tanker for $500,000 in Mobile, Alabama. I was there when we bought it. It's all in the book. It's a great chapter in my book. And we had this Indian guy. This guy's name was Jim, and there's an Indian fella named Mr. Ori, who's a very interesting guy. Knows a lot of presidents and things. Pictures of him on the wall with the presidents, all of this. So we're down there, and I'm kind of a nutcase kind of guy. So
Was he West Indian or like Indian?
no, he was Indian.
Okay.
You know, well, from
like
India.
India?
From
Okay.
India. You know, he's a British guy, actually.
Okay,
but
gotcha,
still.
gotcha.
So we're looking at the oil tanker, and it's going to cost $500,000. I'm going to spend $200,000 fixing it up, getting it ready to go. So I'm excited. I'm like, holy cow, let's buy more. Let's buy 3 of them. We'll ship fuel all over the place. Let's buy 5. We're going to be like Onassis. Because I'm kind of an overboard personality guy. And the Indian guy says to me this, and this is great. He goes, Kevin, calm down. He says, it's like drinking a cup of hot tea. You take the cup and you bring it to your mouth very slowly. And if you do, it all goes in your mouth. But if you lift the cup too fast, it spills all over you and you don't get any of the tea.
That's good.
And I was like, Mr. Ori, that's like what is that, like Confucius or something? That's pretty good, Mr. Ori. I said, but you know what? I drink my tea with a straw. Let's buy 3 of these things. I got outvoted. We didn't buy 3, thank God. My wife would have divorced me if I bought 3 ships. But we did buy the one. And it's a long story. We did make some money. Our first trip, we made $300,000. I said, holy cow, I'm going to be in a hammock, somebody feeding me grapes, fanning me. This is going to be great. They ended up changing. They had a presidential election. Now down in
Trinidad?
down in the Caribbean, it's like the Wild West.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
It is.
It's and we were like the only gringos down there, so we stood out.
We're
right?
Guyanese, we know.
Yeah, we're Guyanese. We know.
So they ended up having a presidential election, and the new president came in and said, I see what's going on. You can't buy this fuel anymore at half price. So that kind of killed the deal. Now we got the soil tanker. What do we do? So we started buying it on what they call the gray market. I'm like, well, what does that mean? That means you go to some port around the other side of the island.
Go to
It's
Maduro's
pitch dark
Venezuela.
out, and they have oil tankers, trucks lined up, 8,000 gallons each, about 40 of them, and we're buying them now for $2.10 a gallon from somebody else who's probably getting it from the government, $1.50. So we didn't want to do that because we thought that could be illegal. It was gray. Well, we weren't sure, right? Last thing you want to do is end up in jail in the Caribbean someplace. So we ended up kind of renting the boat to another fella who had a contact with Venezuela.
Oh, God.
So we took our ship into Venezuela to buy fuel because, see, Venezuela was communist. It was Chavez,
Yeah.
right? And those guys, they just want money. So they got all this oil for nothing. So they're selling it for like $1.50 a gallon because they're putting the money right in their pockets. So we had an investor from Chicago who said, fill it up, $500,000, I'll wire the money. So, well, he made the mistake of wiring the money to Venezuela 2 days before we got there. And everybody knows in the Caribbean, you don't pay till you get your product. Yeah. So by the time we got there and we loaded the fuel, and then we said, the Venezuelan guy said, where's the money? And we said, well, I wired it a couple of days ago. We never got it. So the captain calls us up. Now we're watching our ship on Google Earth move around the Caribbean. It's really cool what we're doing. So he calls up. He goes, they said they didn't get the money. What do we do? And we said, you're getting ripped off. Get out of there. So he hops on the ship with our crew and he takes off. Well, he calls us back about 20 minutes later and he goes, okay, I think I'm okay. I'm in international waters. So we're probably pretty good. I wish I had Trump with me. I would have been resolved by then, but it was too late. So then he goes, uh-oh, I got to go. And he hangs up. Well, Venezuelan Navy came after our ship, surrounded us, 50 caliber guns on our crew. The crew's on their knees with their hands up, right? And the Venezuelan guy goes, turn off the engines. They turned off the engines. They waited until we drifted back into Venezuelan waters. Then they hooked us up and they towed us in. It took 6 months and about 10 bags of money in small bills to get our ship back.
Wow.
Cost us $80,000. We had to bribe people all the way up the ladder to get it out.
Wow. That is. And when was this?
This was 2007. Once we got it out, we sold the ship. And the guy that bought it made 3 payments and then he disappeared. Who knows where he went with it because it's an asset, but it's a moving asset. And then we found it like 2 years later, docked in like Guyana someplace.
Hell yeah, baby.
Guyana, baby.
And
Was
the
it
docking fees are $500 a day. By
Hell
then we owed the
yeah,
guy
we
a half
scam,
a
baby. No, I'm just kidding.
We owed him $500,000 bucks,
Listen,
and we said,
you
keep
want
it.
you want to know why I'm Guyanese, and I will say this, and it could be written down in the books. Guyana, we get a lot of family members and a lot of people that are like, oh, you should go to Guyana, you should do this. It's improving so much, and I'm like, listen, all due respect, I know my people. I know the culture that I come from. I know the West Indian culture. It's screwed up, but I don't trust West Indian culture and Guyanese people at all. And it's sad because I really do wish, my culture had a different vibe to it. But look, I will say I represent a ton of people against Guyanese people that scam people. And
There you go.
That's the one thing I'll say is like, look, it's funny when I tell people, listen, I'm Guyanese, don't trust Guyanese people. Because it's like, like, why should I trust you? I'm like, because I'm telling you not to trust me.
Well, the bottom line is that we lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
I still have a judgment for $1.4 million against the Indian guy that we sold our ship to, which we'll never see, of course. But we lost a lot of money. But you know what? It's the best chapter in my book. And I told my partners, we're still good friends, all of us. And I said, listen, even though we lost a lot of money, we didn't blame anybody. We just kind of chalked it up to experience. And at the end of the day, I said, listen, I'm going to make all the money back on the book, and I'm going to make it back on the movie. And right now, I'm in production, putting together a script for a movie for that chapter of my book.
Well, look, man, this was fun. I can't wait to see it, and we're gonna hopefully get a link to help get
Buy
some
the
of
book.
sales
The
going.
book's name, The Book of Me, The Life and Time of Kevin Hines,
Kevin Hypes.
Kevin Hypes, the New York Forrest Gump.
And that's only one story.
It's a mouthful. It's a mouthful of a book.
There's 70 stories in that book from 5 years old up to 70 years old.
Now you should create a variation for children, like a coloring book.
I'm not sure if I want kids to know what I did, but yeah. But
You can have a coloring book of like you carrying a bag of money to Venezuela.
But there's a lot of positive and a lot of spiritual things in my book too. I preach on Sunday mornings right now at a retirement center every Sunday, and I got to tell you that's the most encouraging hour of my week. Those old people don't get much attention, and not only do I preach to them, sometimes I bring my guitar after the service in the lobby and I sing them Beatles songs.
I told
See,
you.
God gave me certain talents to use. And these old ladies in the wheelchairs, Paul McCartney's 83. When I'm singing those songs to them, like the memory care ladies, they're in Shea Stadium.
They probably think you're flirting with them.
They do.
Maybe. I am pretty old. When I go there, I say, you know what? I'm 71. I said, I've been doing this for 6 years. I tell this to the administrators. When do I get a free room? So my wife would love to get rid of me. I'll take a free room. They're like, you're not getting a free room. Yes.
Well, look,
Yeah, Kevin, it was such a pleasure having you, man. We definitely have to have you back on.
Anytime.
We only got a fraction of all of the stories, but we appreciate the time. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We're back at it consistently every week.
that's what we said last time.
That's what we said the last time. We're very, very busy with the firm and the media company, but to everybody tuning in, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. We're almost 40 episodes in. What a ride it's been. We've had such incredible guests like Kevin, and we're gonna start the new year off with a bang as well. So guys, if you like what you see, comment, subscribe, and leave any suggestions. And until next time.
Peace.